Okay.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Monday, June 17, 2019. It's 5:30 p.m. We are in the conference room for the City Hall, and we do have a quorum. As authorized by Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, this meeting may be convened into closed executive session for the purpose of seeking confidential legal advice from the city attorney on any agenda item herein. The City of Broward reserves the right to reconvene, recess, or realign a regular session or call executive session or order business anytime prior to adjournment. We have one item on the agenda tonight, and it's a work session item 2A, presentation of departmental budgets for FY 2020 and strategy discussion. So, Brian, do you want to start us off with a little discussion of why we're here?
Exactly. Thank you, Mayor. So, Council, as you know, one of the things that we discussed about at the annual strategy session last year was, is trying to get some information in front of Council earlier. We know that, we will have discussions coming up that with the approval of Senate Bill 2 is going to dramatically change the way we do budgeting in the future. I think this is a really good step forward to kind of meet some of Council's goals, which is to kind of hear from department directors about their concerns, their challenges, and their needs coming up before we get into the annual strategy session, and certainly before we get into the budget work sessions in August. So tonight, you're going to hear from each department. Police and fire, just make note, will actually be having a similar conversation with you on June 28th, which is at our annual strategy session. The other thing is that we're going to keep this somewhat high level. We have provided you a copy of the raw data, which is the request that each department has made. We're still in the vetting process, still a long time before ultimately the city manager would make a final recommendation to the council, but certainly this is all part of that process. So tonight, community development, economic development, one other thing too, just so you guys know, will be discussed at a later date as well, as those folks are out. But other than that, you will hear from the other department. I don't think it's any surprise, that we have a lot of requests out there. Equipment, people, increases in services. Sometimes they're contractual obligations and we don't really have a choice. But in other cases, it's the replacement of equipment, or in some cases even some new things. So tonight, I hope you will enjoy what you hear. I know it will be a good conversation. I would ask that the individual detailed items that we don't spend a lot of time on, I have asked the departments, basically to use those if it's necessary to explain what their challenges and needs are. But other than that, I think we're good to go. Everybody is ready, and we'll start with our first department.
So I just want to stress a couple things. This is a new process. We kind of did this at the end of the budget cycle last year in a little bit different manner. Just everybody keep in mind, this is very, very early in the process. We're not here to make decisions. Like Brian said, he hasn't even, gotten even close to his recommended budget yet. So it's good. This is an informational session, and we just need to view it as such. As more information is always good. So I see a couple people have handouts, but not all of us printed on our own. Does somebody? I don't know.
Yeah, I printed out my own.
I don't have them. Did y'all wait for people?
Can I borrow this copy? How many copies y'all want? Since I go last.
Debbie, do you have a copy yet?
No, I do not.
Matt? So 4? She's going to come.
Four.
You 3 have? We know the overachievers in this room.
You know what? I like hard copies.
I just assumed it would be.
Mary, you ready for us? Okay. We're going to start off with the city secretary, so Ms. Hallmark.
So my theme is droplets because my budgets are just a drop in the bucket compared to everybody else. So we're starting off small. So the three budgets that are overseen by my office are City Council, City Secretary, and Action Center. And these are really just the highlights, the high points of what each budget contains: training, travel, registration, council's community outreach funds. All of the city membership dues are through the council's budget, as you all know. And then for city secretary, we handle the elections budget is within, that line item is within our budget. And then as well as advertising, which is all of the public notices through the newspaper. And Action Center covers the computer software maintenance for our web QA systems, which are the work order systems that we utilize for city departments. Gov QA, which is web QA, are customer issues. Over fiscal year 2018, we had just over 5,800 work orders entered. This year to date, we have close to 5,400, and that's just to date, yes. We also utilize that system to track our open records requests. In 2018, it was just over 760. This year to date, it's just over 660, and that's external customers only. We don't log in other departments, call and say, hey, can you find me an ordinance or find me a contract or something like that. These are all external customers. And just to note that through the Action Center, calls received for fiscal year 2018 were just under 28,000. Fiscal year to date is just over 17,000. Action Center also enters the code enforcement issues that get called into the city. The Action Center specifically entered 230 last fiscal year, and this year to date have entered 199. So you see a gradual uptick in all of those. And then Laserfish is our digital records retention program, where all ordinances, resolutions, agendas, and minutes are scanned for permanent retention. The only budget request increase that we requested this year was $5,000 for the city membership dues. That's due to the fact that some of the membership dues are based on a per capita cost. And so as the city grows, so do those membership fees. So we budget based on what we paid for the previous year, but as we pay them for the year, that amount goes up. And so that's why we've asked for the increase for next year. And that's the only increase that we've asked for. As Brian mentioned, he asked us to consider future needs. And as previously stated, more residents equals more calls, more work orders, more code complaints, and more records. And with the possibility of a new municipal complex, we would request that our records retention be brought back in-house as opposed to an off-site storage, and then hire a records clerk, part-time or full-time, to assist with that, and then also to assist with the Action Center and a possible 311 system that will probably come down the pike at some point. So that's really us in a nutshell. The City Secretary's office and the Action Center are really our customers' one-stop shop for anything city-related.
So this is a good place to ask a question, because I think it's time for us to, I've thought it has been time for us to look at a 311 system. I've said it a couple years in a row here. Not sure this is the place to talk about that, but I also don't want it to get lost. You know, why aren't we considering a 311 system now? What research have we done? How much does it cost? How much does it help us? How do we start talking about things like that that come up in this session? Are you going to just keep a list?
Yes, ma'am. And the other thing is, Mayor, some of these relate to future strategy discussions. What I would prefer to do tonight is raise those issues. Certainly not to say that we can't discuss them, but I don't think we go in depth tonight. But we certainly will keep a list, and we'll have that for future discussion.
Yeah, I think a 311 system is something that we need to talk about sooner rather than later.
Okay.
We could start a list. Thank you, Laura.
I'm going to go over the finance department fiscal year 2020 budget request. The finance department consists of the budget department, the accounting department, the purchasing department, and utility billing and meter services. First, I want to go over some of our accomplishments that we've had this year and several years in the past. We have received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the past 15 consecutive years, the Certificate of Achievement of Excellence in Financial Reporting from GFOA for the past 14 consecutive years, and this past fiscal year was our 9th year of an unmodified audit opinion with no findings in our annual audit. We have maintained transparency stars from the Texas Comptroller for the past 3 years, and previously to that, we were in a leadership circle for 4 years for transparency through the state. And this year, we started something new. We were invited by our emergency operations department, Ed, to start a disaster accounting course, and we will complete that within the next couple of months. And we felt that was really important and really excited that he had invited us to get involved in that, since we seem to be really in the path of storms here recently.
What does that mean, disaster accounting course?
It outlines the process and the procedures that are common for cities to follow to have routine. Do we set up a separate fund? Are we able to track the costs for each emergency management situation? And are we filling out the forms correctly? It just reduces the
So it's
amount.
like best practices
It is
in
best practice.
cases of emergency?
It reduces any type of reimbursement that we would have to send back for any type of funding. Well, we're doing the paperwork up front. This last tornado in 2015,
This only tornado.
tornado, yes. No one in finance had gone through this before. And luckily, it was considered a disaster to where we could use Singing Wire to help complete all of that paperwork. But had we not had such a volume or fell into that large category, our accounting department would have had a lot more responsibility in that. So we feel like we were lucky in that aspect, and we don't want to be put in a situation in the future where we don't have any experience or any knowledge of how to move forward internally.
Okay.
Additional accomplishments that we have seen over the past few years. Last year, we hit our 90-day operating cash in the utility fund. We expect to maintain that this year, and our 5-year forecast also maintains that as well. Our utility department annual average non-reuse rate has dropped down below our goal of 3.5% this year. You can see that we fluctuated over the years. Our goal has been 3.5%, but due to aging meters and the tornado and having to put this on the back burner, sometimes it's gotten a little bit higher. But we have worked really close with this year with meter replacement as well as meter maintenance in our meter departments, and we have been able to keep that below 3.5% this year. Also, our annual bid process savings, we continue to see multi-million-dollar savings each year. This is really important, especially with all of our construction projects, that we are really seeing a lot of annual savings in that bid process. For finance, current needs, what we're looking at and requested in our list is a priority-based budgeting software and recurring maintenance for this. It's about $50,000 for the software and the implementation, on-site implementation. It also is $25,000 a year for annual maintenance for fiscal year 21 going forward. This falls under the strategic priority of promoting operational excellence, of providing responsive, reliable, and cost-efficient public services, and improving organizational capacity and effectiveness. And what this software does is it allows us to identify and cost out all the programs performed by the city departments, and then it scores them against the strategic priorities of the strategic plan to identify which programs best correlate with the city's strategic plan and our goals. It'll identify all programs being performed at the city. It'll identify the true cost of each program, aligns the programs with the strategic priorities, identifies prioritization of those programs, aligns resource budgets to the programs, and reinforces budgetary decisions and reporting. And for the implementation, And each year, we would like to have an intern to help complete the implementation as well as collect comparative data each year, comparison where we stand in our priority-based cost for our strategic priorities compared to other cities.
Question on that? What tool are you currently using? And is this additive or does this replace that? Therefore, there's a cost savings of not utilizing the prior tool in full.
This is additive. The current budget that we use is, it's a traditional annual rollover target, moving the line items from one year over to the next, which is fine. And we add, and which is, it's very common in cities to use the traditional annual rollover target line item budget. But PVB is a more forward-thinking budget process, and it evaluates how resources are used and it prioritizes them to the strategic plan. So currently what we have, you can see in the picture, we have a line item budget over on the left that just says, what does it cost? It's by department, so we know the cost of each department. But then what this program does is it moves it a step forward and it says, well, out of all these line items, what are we doing? What are the programs that all of these line item costs are creating? And that is such as for the special events that go on in the city, the 911 dispatch, the audit that the finance department does each year. And each one of those programs that the city does, it's not just that department that's used to the cost of that program. Payroll is a cost of any program because it pays for the personnel. So there's interlinking in all the programs that the city offers, and that's what the software does. It pulls all of the costs to provide that program. And then from there, it moves it a step further and puts it into the category of the strategic plan. Where does this belong? What is the end result of this program? What are we offering to the city as far as the strategic plan and the strategic priorities? Where does this program fall? If it doesn't fall into one of these strategic plan priorities, then it gives council and management an opportunity to look at it and say, why are we doing this? Is it efficient for us to continue doing this? Is this something that we need to reallocate resources to, something that is in the strategic plan that's a higher priority of council and citizens?
Wendy, if you don't mind, Wendy's absolutely right. One thing that traditional budgeting does for you promotes incrementalism. And so we try to combat that by reducing or eliminating one-time expenditures and then making departments start over with their target budget. But what that process doesn't do, it doesn't answer the fundamental questions about why do we even do this. And so there are programs that we continue each year. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they might have been important. Are those same programs important now? One thing we were really impressed with some of these other cities that have done this is that, you know, once they identify all their projects and they score them, it just naturally falls out into priority 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. And then once you start to look at some of those bottom programs, then you start to see, you know, right now, you know, police, it's buried in a $10 million budget. How do you identify those programs that maybe we shouldn't even be doing today, that they don't meet the new strategic plan? And so this is a process in my mind. It's like the layers of onion. You keep peeling back the onion until you see the core. And there are other techniques that do it. Zero-based budgeting, for example, is one of those. But I will tell you that you know, this, I believe, is a much better process, and it aligns with our strategic planning priorities much better. Everything gets categorized in a priority, and if it doesn't, it shouldn't be doing it.
With the state putting the tap on cities, that makes this even more important.
We think so. We were already eyeballing it, but when Senate Bill 2, when it looked like it was going to pass, this is one of the reasons why we put so much energy into kind of looking at some other systems, and you know. So you'll hear more about it as we go through the summer. But and were you going to do a video, or you guys?
Yes. So it is an addition, to answer your question, because we still have to report in our CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, on a line item budget basis. So it's not going to replace the line item budget that's in our financial system. It's going to convert that from a visual standpoint to council and citizens. are we investing in the appropriate programs, and how much are each one of those strategic priorities costing? So, yeah.
So it would help us evaluate and prioritize.
Had a difference in take on taxes. This helps.
Mine's very colored by the experiences I've had over the last 2 years, watching how ordinances come to us.
So while she's pulling that up, this will not be in place for this budget cycle. You're planning ahead for the next budget cycle. Regardless, we have a strategic plan in place now, and I hope department heads will be looking at strategic plan in relation to their budgeting process, even without the tool.
And we definitely will be doing that this year, even without that tool.
Had a difference in take on taxes. This helps.
Mine's very colored by the experiences I've had over the last 2 years, watching how ordinances come to us and how spending occurs. Council is supposed to have the power of the purse, but you have to have information and to be able to have the power of the purse. So my plan for the budget is using a new, innovative, data-driven model that's being used by 100 municipalities around the country, priority-based budgeting.
How is that factoring into setting the priorities for the city?
Well, we went to a new process this year. The business plan was good, but over time, what we found was that 80% of the items were ending up in the essential category. And of course, that really doesn't give you a priority. Everything's a priority.
And it'll take an incomprehensible line item budget, because honestly, I thought with my business background, I thought I understand budgets and spreadsheets. I'll be able to find that extra money for innovation, for road repair. But you can't tell from the way the budget is designed, the line item budget.
This is a part-time government, and council members must and have to rely on staff to make a lot of the decisions for them. And I think this allows us the tools to make the decisions that we were hired by the voters, elected by the voters to make. Not saying we haven't made decisions, I think this is better decision making.
So this priority-based budgeting is a program that's being used in many different local governments around the country. But it goes out and it'll ask the community and ask our council, we'll say, what are the results we want? What are those big overarching goals that we want? And what does it mean? How will we know that we're attaining that? So there's performance measures, and it says, let's prioritize our programs from top to bottom. And those that are on the lower end, like in the third and fourth quartile, say, well, is there another way to do this? Can we consolidate programs? So you're working on both the revenue and the expenditure side.
So it does take the revenue into effect also, to give you a true cost of each one of the programs. Is it an income generating program? And takes that into effect also. And I just put a snapshot of a few of the cities that have started implementing this. It's a journey. Cities can take it as far as they want it. There are 4 levels of priority-based budgeting, starting, at the bottom of just getting the cost of each one of your programs, up to looking at reallocating programs, and as far, it goes all the way up to the top as starting to work with other entities within your area that maybe you're doing the same thing and you can work together to reduce the cost and work together for savings for both entities. As far as possible future needs, these are very just possible, and they're all around development and the additional grant writer that we're bringing on. There's so much development going on in the city that eventually we're going to need to look at possibly a utility meter maintenance specialist and utility customer service representative. We are meeting all of our calls and are doing very well on our call center right now, but we don't want that to get out of hand. So as accounts increase with the increased development, we'll be watching that. We may look at bringing on an additional accountant, and this is based on increased economic development programs, the PIDs, the TERS, the 380 agreements, how many of those we intend to put out there in the future as incentives to bring in future commercial development, as well as with the grant writer, the increased grants comes along increased controls and audit requirements and grant compliance and reporting.
I don't see any of that on here.
That was part of our 3-year strategy. It's not a 2020 request, that's why.
But there's 3 years on here.
We should have that on there.
I mean, I think if it's something that's possible, and this is a 3-year look, we probably should put it on there.
Yes, you're right.
Sorry.
Now, the utility customers, the utility side of it, that would be, has a potential offset with the additional revenues from all the additional accounts that will come online. The accountant, if this person is handling the increased economic development programs and the grants, that would be offset by the administrative allotment and the bids and the TERS and the grants to help offset those costs. As far as challenges that the finance department is looking at, Brian mentioned on this earlier, is Senate Bill 2, and it's the Texas Property Tax Reform and Transparency Act. And I did a little bit of research, and over the past 5 years, property tax revenue in the city of Charlotte has risen on average about 7.5% in the O&M rate over the past 5 years. Recently, Senate Bill 2 passed, will curtail this growth by lowering the revenue increase multiplier used in the O&M rate calculation from 8% to 3.5% and requiring voter approval if 3.5% is exceeded. If you look down at the first box, fiscal year 15 through fiscal year 19, the O&M increase each year has been an average of 7.5% over the 5 years. If you take out the first year in 2015 where we increased the tax rate by 4 pennies, then it comes up to about 5.8% each year. So you can see that the 3.5 is going to be a challenge for us, that we haven't been used to that level of increase, at least for the last 5 years. So that's what we're looking at there. And we are going to, finance is going to have to create a 2-step budget process so that we have a budget ready for the 3.5% trigger cap, as well as a post-election budget if we choose to go out over the 3.5%. So we will have a 2-step, we'll be creating a 2-step budget process over the next 12 months.
This will go into effect 2021?
Right.
Okay.
The fiscal year 2021 budget. So we will have to start on this right away.
One comment I will make too is the preceding 4 or 5 years before that was the recession, and we lost about 7.5% to 8% in tax value. So I just want to remind that some of this is catch up, and then also just the economy improving, and particularly the DFW.
Going along with this, staff will have to become more familiar with the new calculations, reporting requirements, and publication requirements of the new Senate Bill 2, and that we will need to create a strategy for the compressed timelines that are included in this Senate Bill as well. So in summary, for fiscal year 2020, we will continue achievement of performance measure levels and get familiar with the new budget strategy relating to Senate Bill 2.
Council, any other questions for finance?
I have one.
No, hang on. Debbie?
For the software, it's priority budget software. I really like that idea, and I know that a lot of cities are using it actually right now. I know that it's, you said it's $50,000 a year. It's $25,000 a year for maintenance and upgrades or whatever for how many years.
It's $50,000 for the first year for implementation, and then $25,000 a year just for ongoing maintenance. So as long as we
do it. And then that is in addition to our current software. Do we do
IT does, we currently use Tyler Munis for our financial software, and we do a version upgrade every 2 years. And I believe that's included in our annual maintenance.
That's correct.
So we already pay for that when we do the version.
Yeah, I know, I just wanted to make sure that we knew that that was still in that in addition to this. I do know that it's a very good tool and people are making a lot of changes with it. And it may be necessary for us to even keep up with all the new rules with Senate Bill 2. Because I can't see us manually doing everything and keeping up with it properly. The recording is so important that we have it out there.
Brian?
Yeah, your number 2, is that, it says cash handling for internal controls training for city staff. Does that have to do with training for that software package?
No, it doesn't. We threw this out there just because of the high level of turnover that the city has experienced. We felt like it would be a good experience for all of the employees that handle any cash, anyway, whether it's transporting it, whether it's counting it down, whether it's interacting with customers that come in, that they have a refresher on cash handling all at one time. We would eventually like to, once we have a citywide training from an external source, that we continue that training once a year, whether we decide to take it on internally or we continue to have a facilitator come do that for the city.
And that was my other question, the intern, we had it down for 19,000 for a year. Do we think that's a fair cost, fair price for what that person would have to be responsible?
It's not full-time, it would only just be for a few months a year for a college student that would like to come in and do an internship. And we feel like it would be a great opportunity for, right, and that's why we were going to offer it as an intern program.
Most internships for the programs that we're looking for are unpaid.
Yes, that's what I was wondering.
So this will,
But I know this is brand new.
I know there are a lot of programs that we jump on this.
Anyone else for Wendy? Hey, Brian, thank you, Wendy. Did you say community development is going to be later?
Yes.
Like
Not today.
in the strategy session?
No, the economic development and community development will have to be scheduled for a different time because they're both houses. Is that what you were asking me when you said later?
So how does that happen?
We
What
have
do you
not
need a different
decided.
time?
What we were trying to do though is avoid a special meeting. We're having some conversations about what that might look like, whether we add that to a future meeting or something like that. All right, human resources.
Thank you. Happy to be here. This is one of the times where, our department, Human Resources, doesn't really have a citywide accreditation or a department accreditation. And so we kind of measure the value of your employees by how well they're educated in are the SPHRs, which is Senior Professional Human Resources. So I'm going to go through and just talk a little bit about my employees, just briefly. Recently, we hired Sean Rupp. He's been here about 1 year. He has 20 years of experience. He comes to us with a master's in business administration. Sean's handling the risk management side for me, a little bit of employee relations, doing a great job. He is certified Senior Professional Human Resources by the Human Resources Certification Institute and a Senior Professional in HR by SHRM. Sherry Pinnell, some of you may know, she is the longest term non-uniform city employee who just reached her 25 years yesterday. So we had a little celebration for her. She is a great resource, and she is my knowledge base for everything that ever happened at the city going back 25 years. If I need to know something, she knows that answer. Alexis Chernick, recent graduate, college 2016. She's my superstar. She just passed her certification exam with SHRM just in the last couple of weeks. She spearheaded a fundraiser event where we sell cookies at Valentine's Day, and we raised about $900 and donated it to the animal shelter. So thank you to all the city employees for their buying the cookies for us, and that way we can make that donation. A lot of you know Amanda. Amanda is our wellness coordinator. She's certified sure I get it right. She is a certified exercise physiologist by the American College of Sports Medicine, and she's done a great job of spearheading our wellness events here. And then Leanne is new, and she has a degree in psychology. She's our human resources assistant. We have a really good team that takes care of all the city, and I think it's really important that sometimes we get hidden behind there, and people don't always know we exist.
Until there's a
hand-
problem.
Beg your pardon?
Until there's a problem.
Until there's a problem, or in my eyes, until there's an opportunity. So we handle onboarding and orientation. So we see you on the way in. We handle staffing and recruitment. We help you get here. We handle employee relations, training and development, risk management, wellness, benefits and compensation. So a wide range of things go on in human resources. Those 6 employees handle all this for the 400 employees and the 325 family members of those employees. Our challenges are compensation, employee retention and staffing, and the employee health fund. Compensation is going to be discussed at the retreat on the 29th, so I'm not going to go into that
Strategy session.
strategy session, excuse me, today.
Someday.
I am going to talk a little bit about employee retention and staffing and the employee health fund. So our historical rate of employee retention, or people leaving, has leveled off a little bit. So 14.8, 13.9, 14.4. So my challenge to my staff has been, is there some way we can overcome that in this work environment? We've been using LinkedIn a lot more, Facebook, to try to promote ourselves. At the compensation discussion at the retreat, I have a couple of ideas that hopefully we talked about. And going forward, hopefully, we will be able to get that number down just a little bit. But as you can see, it is leveled off, and I have a feeling that maybe the reality of that was Metroplex until something dramatic changes. But we're going to try to see if we can get down a couple points. I think with the compensation strategies that we've had in the last couple of years, making sure we keep health benefits cost effective, that will help us retain those employees going forward. Having opportunities for them to grow is important. I know when they're small, sometimes those don't exist. We just have to be sure they know that they exist and that if they hang on, they're going to get their chance.
Can you do some research and find out what that rate is from neighboring communities?
Yes.
And let us know at the strategy session?
Yes.
Not the retreat,
Not
the
a
strategy.
retreat.
That's right. So one of our big challenges, of course, is health coverage. We have had 6 claims that equal 8 claims that equal $1.7 million of a total benefit payout of $3.6 million. We have received over $1 million in reinsurance. It's a pay me now or pay me later. Ultimately, the reinsurance carriers going forward are going to charge us more. Going into the next year, we are employing some strategies so that moving forward, we can hopefully at least keep costs as neutral as possible. So one of the things we're going to be doing as we go into next year is we're going to be moving from a preferred provider organization to an exclusive provider organization. That just means you cannot use an out-of-network doctor. Projected savings, $284,000. The prescription plan, we're going to change the formulary so that it moves more towards an evidence-based, value-based formulary. That is projected to save $109,000. Both of those changes won't affect people's ability to get the health care they need. We'll just make sure we get them to the most cost-effective providers and the lowest cost pharmacy drugs that are available. And then last, if we chose Walgreens or CVS, then we could save an additional amount of money. So we decided to go with the CVS network, which is not just CVS, it's CVS and practically every other network. It just excludes one. By doing that, you save 8%.
And it's also an example of when the city manager doesn't get his way.
Does Walgreens have a similar one that excludes
They
CVS?
do. The better savings was on the CVS side.
That's-
Until next year.
Right.
That's pretty funny.
Could be, it's a game, that's exactly right. But if you don't play the game, you're going to spend money you didn't have to spend.
I don't understand the middle one, moving from a base formulary to a standard.
So-
Help me understand that.
Currently, every single drug is measured by some entity. Some of them are measured by the drug companies themselves. Some are measured by independent groups like pharmacy schools. And so what they've done is they've taken and they've classified a drug. And I'm going to use cholesterol, hyperlipidemia, as an example. We know there are drugs in that category that cost $4. There are drugs in that category that cost $1,000. And so what you do is you make sure people get directed to the lowest cost option first. And as they determine what healthcare need they have, they may not work on that drug. And so you'll move through step therapy and prior authorization to get to the more expensive drugs versus the doctor having the person take the most expensive drug first. So by doing that, you should begin to direct people to the lowest cost option that provides the same health outcome.
How does that happen when a doctor is the one that prescribes what drug they're giving?
Well, in our world right now, there's value-based purchasing, and that's where everything is headed. Value-based purchasing means that there'll be an edit inside of the prescription plan that says this person's never had a cholesterol drug. They have to start with one of these 6 or 8 first and move to the drugs that cost more. Doctors are very familiar with it. Matter of fact, most doctors, when they go to prescribe a drug for a person, they'll go right into their computer and be able to look to see what they can prescribe for you right away and actually prescribe the drug that matches what your plan will allow to start with. And so it directs everybody to the lowest cost. The same thing's going to happen on the health coverage side. There's going to be reference-based pricing. There's going to be best outcomes, best practice. So if you're going to have a knee surgery, we're going to send you to the place that costs the least, that has the best outcomes. Same goes for drugs. So all these things are now being metric and measured by health plans. And everybody's going to have to go this way in order for us to manage healthcare costs.
And council, I do want to say this, we did evaluate what impact this would have on our employees. And one point I want to make with this is that, in various different plan sets that we have related to our entire care for all of our employees, there are some things such as, where we use advanced features or where we've ratcheted it up because of different types of claims we've had in the past. This is an area where we have not really had any tightening. And we're only ratcheting it up one level. So, from 1 to 5, we're technically at 1 now. So this kind of introduces that next step and that value engineering, if you want to, related to these plans. We had a lot of discussions with our executive team on this and their staffs, and we feel like this is very reasonable, and given the amount of savings, it's definitely worthwhile. We know that there are, although we'll know for sure in July, we know that there's going to be an increase in healthcare anyway. So this actually reduces that amount as we get into our next budget year, but does it in a way that's going to have the least amount of impact. You could ratchet this up for a lot more savings, but then you really start to affect how people, their medical plan. We don't want to have to do that.
My biggest concern is, and I know we talk a lot about this later on, it's not a healthcare discussion tonight, but going from a PPO to an EPO, are we sure that there's people that aren't going to lose their general physician and now they're going to be out of health network? Because that's always what you hear when you go away from PPO. I've been with this doctor for 12 years, and now they're not part of this anymore, and now I can't go to them anymore. Now I got to start all over. That's my biggest fear when it comes to that switch. I understand the ratcheting up of making sure you're trying different medications first, but if somebody's been with their doctor for 12, 15 years and all of a sudden they can't be at it because they're not in that I don't think that's okay.
We did not change networks.
Okay.
So EPO means all of United Healthcare's physicians, and the PPO meant all of United Healthcare's physicians. So people who are already going to their own doctor that were out of network, it doesn't change anything. That doctor's just not covered at all. And it would have been a long stretch to get them covered, because think about it. Between, if there's no copay on the out-of-network side, you have to get to your deductible before it's covered. But now, nothing is covered on that side. There's minimal disruption when you run the geo and you look at who is using doctors out of network versus in network. They were already using those doctors. But there's not.
They have other choices. The other thing I want to mention is that we had the conversation, what if you're in Florida on vacation and you trip and bust your knuckle or something? You still have coverage. Emergencies like that are still covered under this plan. This is really more when you make a conscious decision that given all the other choices and available options you have, you're still going to make this other choice. That's what this is about. It's not having to do with emergencies. That's what we dealt with most, because that's what our employees were most afraid of, is that they would get caught by surprise.
Well, you can have emergencies in your own community and get caught by surprise because there's 4 or 5 different doctors treating you in different ways, some in network, some out of network. That to me is the most problematic.
And so emergencies are covered just like it was in network. There's always going to be, when a provider files a claim, and for whatever reason somebody's out of network, sometimes there has to be intervening by HR or by Compass to help get it all corrected. Because remember, machines behind the scenes process all these claims, not always does a human being touch every single nugget. So that's why you call in, you say, hey, I went to the doctor. I couldn't choose anesthesiologist. That's who put me under and that's who did it. And so these things have to be fixed sometimes after the fact. They're the rarity, not the norm. We don't normally have disruption. When there is, we have lots of great resources to fix those disruptions and make sure somebody wasn't treated wrong. It's if you choose to have a colonoscopy or you choose to have knee surgery somewhere else or back surgery, there is going to be a very specific set of best practices, lowest cost providers that are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There's almost nothing that exists that can't be delivered through what United Healthcare already has contracted. And the last item on there, which is good, is that we have worked with the Public Employer Benefits Alliance in partnership with TML, and we'll be moving any retiree who is post 65 to a fully insured program starting on July 1st. And we only have one. That way they don't affect our ability to purchase reinsurance. We be so. So everybody who's over 65, when they retire, that will be their option. So I did put this up because the one item that's in the list is whether or not we begin to create a fund balance or a reserve for the health benefits fund. The numbers up there were effective through the month of April. Under the proposed, those are the speculated amounts of costs that would be necessary to have the fund be fully paid out next year. We have had a large amount of benefit payments this year, but that was because of 2 really large reinsurance claims. So our consultant is still convinced that $4,276,153 is the amount of benefit payments that would be the norm for next year. It's close to what we had budgeted this year. We budgeted a little more up above. Going on to the next slide, the only difference between the 2 slides is the bottom line where it says 3 months of claims over 3 years. And so if we built that in, we could begin to build a fund balance. It does increase the contributions by employees and the city. In order to begin to build that fund, it would increase the amount necessary to fund that amount for next year.
I don't I don't understand how you increase the fund balance by 356, but the ending fund balance doesn't have a reserve in it.
He's showing it as an expense.
It's an expense.
But it's not an expense, it's a fund
I
balance.
know. It's just the way he's got it displayed on here, but the goal is that.
We need help him.
Wait a minute. Where did it come from? That was our best way to show that we were pulling that number out because it's built into the employee contribution and city contribution.
And we already book an IBNR
Yes.
every year end to cover 60 days worth of claims that have been incurred, but we have not paid yet when we do our final financial statements. But this would be to build in some fund balance for those years that are above our expectations in claims, where we've had a bad year and we don't get the same situation that we had this year.
But it would be a fund balance, it wouldn't be an expense.
Right.
I'm not trying to split
Yes.
hairs, I'm trying to understand.
Yes.
And I think I'm not very good with expense versus revenues, but my understanding is that we have to build it in the revenue side and then account for it on the expense side somewhere. It could be that we blend it in something,
No.
but I'd rather not blend it in.
No, you keep it as a fund balance.
Yeah.
But Mayor, you're right. The goal here, though, is, you can see in 17, that was a bad year. We had a net reduction of $200,000. We have good years. In some years, it builds up that balance anyway. But what we want to do is have a definite strategy on how we're going to handle this stuff in the future, so that we can actually have a balance that in the bad years doesn't force us to go to the general fund and utility fund to make up the difference.
I understand what you're trying to do, I just want to make sure I understand that that's what you're actually doing.
That is what we're doing.
Sorry.
That's okay.
This is not my best skill set.
It's perfectly fine, just so we understand what you're trying to accomplish.
The other thing that's good, and I'll just make a note of this, and I know you probably have already looked, but the Employee Health Benefits Fund is pretty close to that, to being on track for what the projection here was. Pretty close. Maybe when we see May, it'll be, but it's not too far off in spite of all those claims.
Well, if we have the funding, I absolutely agree conceptually that we need to build up the fund balance there.
That will help balance out those years. They're never going to be perfect. And last.
Council, questions for HR?
No, I
But
have
we haven't already
questions
asked.
about insurance, but we'll talk about that later.
Will we have an opportunity in
Discussion.
the strategy session to talk about that more?
I can.
Let me say this, in July, we have an actual work session we do every year to talk about this in detail. The annual strategy session, we go about compensation, benefits, not really about.
But there's a work session scheduled.
Yes.
Is that okay now?
Yeah, that's why I didn't have it up. Because I knew we were talking about it.
One thing I explained to Matt, I think it's bothering Matt, is going to the cheaper doctor, the exclusive provider option. They're not cheaper doctors. They're negotiated with United Healthcare. They've negotiated their fees to them. They're just like any other doctor. And if you go to them out of network, they're as expensive as any other doctor.
Yeah.
They've just negotiated their fees with them, and that's the reason that they're trying to keep you in networks, because the fees are cheaper.
Yeah, I know exactly how it works. What I have a problem with philosophy is, and this is not, we're off topic here, but one of the things, especially working for a municipality where a lot of guys are hourly, and you're not a CEO, a lot of these people aren't going to be able to afford to be able to go to a doctor on their own and pay cash or whatever. And cities are always, not just cities, corporations, companies, everybody, with raising healthcare costs, are always going to be looking at how you bring that down. And that a lot of times falls back onto the employee, because you could switch. Now, we're not switching away from United Healthcare, which is great. We could have easily gone to Blue Cross Blue Shield this year and then back to United Healthcare, all because you're looking at that bottom dollar. And I've seen it happen, and it's happened to us, where you've been with a general physician for a really long time, and then all of a sudden, because it looks good on paper, it switches. That person is now out of pocket, and you can't go to them anymore. And now it's transferring records. They don't have your whole history. It can lead to bad health care, and it can cost people. So I just want to make sure, and it makes me feel better that we're still looking at healthcare, but just having that conversation a little bit more, because sometimes stuff looks good on paper, but it doesn't translate well to the employee. What we don't want is somebody to, you know, was with there because of their history. Maybe they were getting watched for a heart disease or something like that, and then they're forced to go to a new physician that doesn't have all of that history, and they have a heart attack. That kind of stuff can happen. So I understand how it works. I do our healthcare for our business, and we have to look at that every year. We don't have 400 to choose from. I only have 12 people that I have to worry about. So it's easy. It's a little bit easier for me. But I understand where those problems in those situations come about. So that's where I was just coming at it from, and you know, knowing that we're still within that healthcare helps as well. But it'll just be interesting to see the final breakdown when we get to talk about it. That was just my only point. Sorry to get off track on that.
I understand.
It's in a budget.
And my concern is that the employees have order health care, for sure, and minimal disruption. For sure.
Anything else? Thanks, Richard. Joey, you win the prize for the most line items.
Coolest
Although
graph.
community development was close. Public safety.
For the prize for that?
You're not getting a map.
Feel some water?
Yeah, I think you win.
Okay,
Welcome.
thank you.
I didn't mean to set you up for.
No, we're good. We're good. So, I guess I'd start off with something that makes me happy and my department happy. Historically, the city council and the city has invested in IT. And IT costs money. And IT is needed to run businesses and services. So in FY 2014, we spent $1.2 million rebuilding 2 data centers. And that was huge. That put us way ahead of other cities. There's also a bond election to complete the city's internal fiber ring. Again, that's huge. That puts us in a very strategic position that a lot of other cities don't have. And then just last year, we're still working on implementing this. We spent $500,000 to rebuild or to replace a lot of the equipment that was bought in 2014. And there's an annual conference for Texas IT directors and managers that I go to every other year, every other couple of years, and in talking with how they're set up and what kind of funding they get, it puts it in perspective as to how all of this puts us in a really better spot than a lot of this funding, than a lot of smaller cities or municipalities or counties. But seeing what they have to work with and what support they do or do not get from council and their management versus what we have, it really puts us in a good spot, and it makes me happy that we do this. So I'm just going to talk about a few of my line items. I didn't want to obviously take too much time. So one's going to be the vendor support maintenance for key systems, IT hardware that is powerful, redundant, and current for public safety, cybersecurity solutions to protect the city's data and systems, and additional staff needs to meet growing needs for technology in all city departments. And all of this falls in line with the strategic plan on promoting operational excellence, maintaining the integrity and continuity of the city's network and application systems. It also falls in line with many more sections of the strategic plan. So vendor maintenance and support. So what this is extending maintenance for all of our back-end network equipment and our telephone equipment. Our contracts are going to be up for renewal in 2020, and you typically do a 3-year contract because you get a discount. But you buy 3 years, right? Sometimes that means you get a year free. try and flatten out the budget. We've been able to get the vendors to cut that 3-year agreement into annual payments to try and flatten out the budget so we don't get a spike every 3 years. That's been a problem in the past, so hopefully we'll take care of that with this. Public safety hardware requests, so the bottom left, $24,000. What that is to replace all of the computers and monitors in our 911 call center. And that's a lot. But those computers are some of the most important computers that a user will use. You know, no one wants to call 911 and say, oh, hang on, I got hourglass, or hey, my computer's locked up. So we have to overbuild them. They run a lot of software, and they have to be redundant. So like if a hard drive were to fail, the computer doesn't crash. It just pops up a notification to us. The failover takes charge, and you know it's business as usual. And they've also got 9 monitors per workstation. We want to replace them all at once, because if you're running a 12-hour shift and you're looking at 9 different monitors from 9 different manufacturers, you're going to get headaches, because they're not going to all have the same brightness. They're not going to all have the same refresh rate.
Well, those are the most important computers in the city.
Right. So they're not part of our normal 3-year replacement plan because they cost so much. And we can stretch them out to 4 years because we build them so much. We overbuild them to be able to add and last longer. And that's also for maintenance on all of them. The one on the right for $24,000, that is to replace all of the network devices in all of our fire apparatus vehicles. So right now we're using consumer grade devices, and what happens is they sit in the bay and they get hot and the batteries expand, and even the firemen have brought them to us and say, hey, this is getting hot enough where we're concerned it's going to start a fire. And when a fireman says that, you really want to listen. So this solution does have a 5-year maintenance included in their military grade devices, and I know multiple local agencies use them. I know Garland's used them for many years, and this is a turnkey solution where a company would come in and install them all, support them, and make sure that we don't have any issues with them.
So before we move off to that, the statement you made a minute ago about these are not in the 3-year replacement plan because they're so expensive, to me, they should be in the replacement plan because they're so expensive. I'm a little confused by that statement.
So they can be. Thank you. Sorry. Technical difficulties. They can be added into the replacement plan, but again, it's a 4-year, so it is a spike every 4 years, if that makes sense. So it's like.
I understand.
Okay.
But
Mayor, we had actually, over time, there has been, like, sometimes when we've done a refresh and we've bought equipment and paid for maintenance, like as Joey said, sometimes it's on a 3-year cycle or whatever. We have annual money we put in to replace all the PCs and laptops, and that's on a cycle. We also have a 5-year equipment replacement plan. And I think what Joey is saying is that there's some equipment that has not been on that list. That's what we found out in our discussions. And we're trying to get it on that list. We're trying to, particularly with what we know is coming up in our future, the 3.5%, is try to have a bucket that moves forward through time, regardless of things moving in and out. But having that bucket throughout the whole time, that's one of the reasons he was talking about, trying to work with some of these vendors so that they don't get it all a lump sum up front, and then we don't have any money set aside for that the next 3 years. And then at the end of 3 years, you got to buy everything again. So that's not always possible, but that's what our goal is.
Get it on the list.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, cybersecurity. This is something that's huge in my field, and it's only going to get bigger and more complex and more expensive. Obviously, the threats are becoming more prevalent and complex. Municipalities are currently being targeted because of known limited resources and that we're forced to run outdated software. The software that we use, the state that we have to use to communicate with the state, recently was updated, I think 2 years ago. Before that, they were about 5 years behind on running software that was about to be decommissioned by the vendor, and they weren't installing security patches. And this is software for the police department. And there was nothing we could do. You know, the state provides it. They say, here, this is what you're going to use. This is what we do. This is what we support. All we can do really is try and mitigate the risk in those security patches not being available. And recovering from attacks are extremely expensive. So right now, and actually for the past 5 or 6 years, there's something called ransomware that has been huge. What happens is all it takes is one user to click on the wrong link in an email. The attacker comes in and puts a lock on all of your files, and then they give you a ransom note. And that ransom note, they ask for Bitcoin, and it is untraceable, right? So last year, Atlanta got hit, and they chose not to pay the ransom. So about the first two and a half weeks, they spent about $2.6 million trying to bring security firms in to fix what was locked. They were unsuccessful. Right now, they're looking at spending $17 million. And when this happened, they literally went in and shut down every computer in the city, and everyone was on pen and paper for 2 or 3 weeks. And they didn't pay the ransom, which isn't a bad thing, but they didn't recover either, so they had to rebuild from scratch. So
How much was the ransom?
probably about $70,000.
Oh, gosh.
Right. And that was last year, I think in March. March of this year, Jackson County got hit with it, and they did pay the ransom. And typically, when you pay the ransom, you get your data back, because if the hacker didn't give you your data back, no one would pay the ransom, right? And right now, they're saying that you get about 60% of your data back. There's issues in that where even though you get your data back, you lose, you can't recover completely, and that has to do with PD and property and evidence data, and I don't really want to go into that in a public forum.
If you're backing your stuff up correctly, like to the cloud or to offsite servers and stuff like that, does that help in your recovery, or do they come in and can they affect that stuff too?
So it's getting worse and worse. We got hit with this about 7 years ago, and I was the lead technical person in IT at the time, and I had no idea what it was. I just know that we got a call from someone at DSB saying, hey, I've got this pop-up, and it says we've got 3 days to pay this amount of money, or you'll never get your files back. And your options when you get hit with this are to pay the ransom, rebuild from backup, or rebuild from scratch. And it's getting more and more complex to where, yes, it can infiltrate your backups. And at that point, you're paying the ransom or you're rebuilding from scratch.
In our case that year, when that first one occurred, it took us about almost a week to find a clean backup and restore. And then it happened to us again within a year.
A couple of weeks.
And that one only took a few days because by that time, we already kind of knew the process. But the key is to make sure it doesn't happen to begin with.
Yeah.
So it has happened to us. It didn't, it wasn't this expensive, but let me tell you what, it scared us this bad.
And like I said, it's just getting more and more complex and more advanced where it does get your backups. There's nothing you can really do. Really what you want to do is you want to have backups, and you want to have it off your network, which is good. You can't automate that process to where you get hit here, well, you're going to back up to this. You're still going to lose what happened in between the time, but you're still getting back. And just last month, Baltimore got hit. And they're expecting that to cost over $18 million. So cybersecurity is huge. We have a need for it, and that's why I'm asking for it. And this is just one of many attacks that are out there. It's the big one, it's the most expensive one, and it's, I mean, these are all articles that I pulled up, you know, there's screenshots of articles that are out there today.
So what software on here is going to prevent or help prevent the ransomware?
There's a couple of options. So IT, I've been talking to city management for the past couple of years about trying to fill this need. I had proposed in this year's budget to hire a security administrator, a dedicated cybersecurity position. City management wanted me to look for an outsourced solution. And that kind of bummed me out a little bit, but after thinking about it, you know, since cybersecurity expertise is so in high demand, it would be hard for us to afford a good one, and it would be hard for us to keep a good one. They're going to come here, they'll be here for 6 months, a year, and they'll go out in the private sector and double their salary. So I started, this was very recently, I haven't had a lot of time to dig into this. And the main things that I'm finding on these, because there are companies that do what's called security as a service, so you're outsourcing your security. But most of them, they report, they monitor, and they log. So they're not, what they'll do is they'll put their stuff on our network, and then when they see something weird or they see a breach, they're going to say, hey, look, this is the problem you have, you need to fix it. That doesn't do a lot of good for me when I don't have the expertise in-house to fix it, and I don't have the resources in-house to fix it. And the company that I talked to, they're local, they do a lot of business with local cities, and they want $66,000 a year to do that for us. And again, that's to log, monitor, and alert. The step further that I would like is remediate. I want them to come in and say, hey, this is what's going on, this is what we're going to do to fix it, here's our plan, and we will learn, you know, that expertise in the process because they're going to work with us. So there's another company, a national company that I'm talking to, but they also have a local presence, and I'm still waiting for a quote that will do the remediation part, but it's looking to be about twice that per year.
So Joey, why wouldn't the local company include the remediation in their quote?
So it's just something they don't offer. And I can understand that because for them to do that, they're going to really need to know our environment to be able to go in and say, this is okay. Instead of losing, you know, coming in and getting rid of 98% of it, and then 2 weeks later, we're back where we started.
It's a liability issue.
Exactly. Exactly. So, you know, what I saw for the security administrator, which is on the next slide, was like $118,000. To outsource it, it's going to cost about that same, maybe more, to get that remediation part in. But I mean, again, I think outsourcing is good when it makes sense, and I think this is, to his point, where it does make sense. It's just it costs the same as hiring someone, but you get more for your buck because they're monitoring our network 24/7. They do have the expertise to remediate, and they bring in systems to look at what's going on in our network. And if they see something weird, they're going to pick up the phone and call us and say, hey, this is what's happening, we're looking into it, we'll let you know.
You know, you started off your presentation talking about municipalities are targeted because of limited resources and old systems and such. You know, I think that Texas municipalities may get a higher focus with this 3.5% cap, knowing that these type of investments are more difficult for cities to even make.
And another reason they're being targeted is because they're paying the ransom because they don't have what's needed to recover. And the whole thing is with cybersecurity, it's not if you get hit, it's when. And then the next thing is how you respond. So this is the stuff that keeps us IT folks up at night.
Which sounds like to me it's just a reality that we're gonna have to budget for.
And it's not cheap.
I don't doubt, and I don't think in our previous conversations that we doubt that we don't need to put more resources into this. The only question is, what's the most cost-effective way to do that? And that's something that Joey is working on, and I think we will get a good solution here. But I will tell you, just those stories that he showed on the previous slide, the fact that it actually did happen to us, and we probably were more lucky than not that we were able to recover even within that week. Y'all heard of the company, international company, I think it's Maersk, M-A-E-R-S-K. So mostly shipping and transportation and some things.
Yeah.
They had the same thing happen to them, and even as fast, they actually had a more robust system, obviously, than we do. But by the time they got it contained, it had contaminated every computer in the world. Well, they had one company in Africa, one branch that had the hardware that had been offline for a couple days because of a power shortfall. And they were able to rebuild their system with that one unit. And if it had not been for that, if they had had their power, then every unit would have had to do that, and they would have had to rebuild from scratch. So this is serious stuff. I mean, it really is.
And the stuff that we got hit was like 7 years ago. This stuff has advanced a lot from now until then. So I can honestly say that if we get hit tomorrow, we would be in a good spot. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is work towards that.
And I worked in IT for many, many years, on mainframe and on regular computers. Peace of mind that you have, or even if it's a contractor that comes in and does it and monitors it from somewhere else, some other part of the world, is wonderful. But if you can have one that can come and knows intimately your protocol on all your systems and what you're running, that's an even better bang for your buck. That's expensive.
Yes,
There.
So that's the whole cybersecurity doom and gloom. I apologize.
Talk about healthcare.
I need more because I don't sleep at night.
Yeah, right.
So now we're getting into staffing. This has got a lot of information on it. I apologize. Some of the names of the cities are truncated or broken up, but this is IT employee per capita for a lot of local cities. And if you look where average is, and you look where we are, and the average is 0.0166. But again, looking back at where we are, this is FY 17, 18, and 19. So we're losing ground, so to speak, if that makes sense. And it makes sense because citizens are coming in, right? And I think this next slide shows our workload and where we're at a lot better, because it's IT employee to city employee, because IT supports the city employees. We don't support the citizens directly, right? So the more people we have here, the more our workload is. And on this one, we are here, and again, we're losing ground, and your average is here. Your average isn't in the middle because Arlington did something to get that big, like 80 people in their IT department. But, you know, we need a plan to at least move more towards average. Because we do support the entire city, and you don't really hear anyone saying, hey, let's stop using IT to make this process better. It's more of, hey, how can we involve IT to improve it? So there's a lot of information, put a lot of time in trying to get this data, but that's where we're at. So the new personnel requests. So this just repeats what I just said. We've currently got 46 projects estimated 2,800 hours to complete. And those are just projects. That doesn't include our day-to-day, patching software systems, any fires that come up. This is just straight projects. And I can outsource some of them, but I can't outsource all of them. One of the highest ones on that list is editing our backups, which goes back to the ransomware. We haven't done that in a while. I can't outsource that because to edit our backups, you need to know our systems and need to know what needs to be backed up. So what I was asking for this year is an IT manager, security administrator, application support analyst, and a GIS technician 1. And GIS technician 1 would be dedicated to public works. And then I would also be asking for one on this next slide you'll see for a dedicated GIS technician for GIS.
So you lost a position or you lost an employee?
Last year the IT manager position was not funded.
Okay.
So, and this next slide, these numbers are a little bit different on what you guys have. And what they are is the amount of salary plus benefits with a 3% increase in each year. So you've got the IT manager, the IT security administrator, the applications analyst, and the GIS technician for this year. And then next year, I would look for an administrative assistant. We pay a lot of bills. That's almost a full-time job for us. And right now, I have an IT person doing that. And IT people don't want to come in and be an administrative assistant and pay bills.
Yeah.
So it's they don't like that aspect. And then if they leave, which he did, it was very hard to find a replacement. And that replacement didn't work out because he didn't want to pay bills, and I ended up actually bringing the guy that left back in. And this is, what it looks like today. If I were to get an IT manager, the system administrator, I would definitely, rethink that depending on how much workload that IT manager can take off. And the IT manager is not here to manage people, because in IT we don't manage people, we manage things. So they'll be like a project manager. They'll be working on high-level projects, the list that I said earlier, to try and bring that down and to help protect the city. And that's all I got. Any questions?
Thanks for making us nervous.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I lived it. I lived it.
We know that. It was a very, very difficult environment.
Okay. We good?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening.
You won't scare us.
It can be kind of scary. Let me start. Starting out, I just want to make sure that everybody knows and understands the mission of the library in the first place. Those are broad mission, part of our mission statement from the Public Library Strategic Plan that was refreshed in August of 2016. It's our idea resource, an opportunity to stimulate people's thinking, discovering, learning, enlightenment, enrichment, economic vitality, fostering self-learning, and then access to all of those resources, whether they're electronic or whether they're something you can pull off the shelf and hold in your hand, or whether it's a conversation with an information professional or the use of one of our public computers, are all part of our reason for being. I want to start by talking about our library's accreditation. It's a big deal to us, but there's also importance for us to have it in the first place as a member of the Texas library system for state fiscal year 2019. We are fully qualified and accredited by the Texas State Library and Archives Commission. Every year we submit an annual report. They look at the dollars that we spend on resources, on our operating expenses, the level of professionals that we have on our staff, our circulations. Some of those are very, very critical, especially what we spend on our resources so far as meeting their criteria for accreditation. Then there are wonderful benefits that come from that, including access to the TextShare database,
databases. Right now, there are 52 full-text electronic resource databases. If we were to buy those individually, we would pay $176,000 plus through the state library and their collective bargaining ability. They do get subscriptions for us, for which we only pay a small subsidy of $1,510. These are the same databases. Sometimes they call them the K-12 databases that are so important to our education system, but they're very important to our library users as well. Reciprocal borrowing and resource sharing is very, very important. We are participants in the Tech Share Card program. You can come to our library if you have an established account and your account is in good standing. You can go to UTD and have access to any number of academic materials that we wouldn't have in a popular materials library. Depending on which library you go to, you are subject to whatever rules they have as far as what they are willing to lend and not lend. But in any event, if you want to go find things on your own, the Tech Share Card is your passport to borrowing privileges at least 500 libraries statewide. We also are participants as a result of our accreditation in the statewide interlibrary loan borrowing program. That means we'll borrow it for you from another library, so you don't have to go traipsing off around the state to go to the libraries. But if we can find a source for you, we will. And the state library is reimbursing lending libraries. I believe in the last couple of years, we've received at least a couple $1,000s, which goes into the general fund. So we do bring in some revenue too. We are also eligible for our Tech Express courier subsidies. That is, we have twice a week delivery service that goes around from library to library, so that when we borrow something from, say, maybe Carrollton or Frisco, we don't have to pay postage to ship that back and forth. So that's a cost savings there. And then, as available, we are eligible for state library competitive grants, programs, project opportunities. A lot of federal funds from the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences, federal dollars, go through the state library and are funneled out into eligible libraries within the state through their competitive grants and other programs. And where I really am happy, very, very proud, is our recognition of service excellence that comes through the Texas Municipal Library Directors Association. TMLDA is an affiliate of the Texas Municipal League, and if you were at the council meeting in April, we were recognized for 14 consecutive years of service excellence. We're very, very proud of it. I'm happy to have been here for almost 8 years now, because my predecessors worked very, very hard to get that ball rolling for us. The awards are conferred annually on the basis of outstanding achievement. We have to submit an application that shows our performance across 10 different criteria, everything from the summer reading program, services outreach to the underserved, summer reading program, and were it not for the efforts of my amazing staff and Miss Laura Turner, who's our library services manager, it would be hard to keep up that record of excellence. But they work very, very hard every day to make sure that we continue to serve our public in the best way we can. We have been a library on the move. Might not be on water, but boy, we've been moving 2 times. In May 2015, if you recall, we closed the library for our relocation, 5702 Rowlett Road. No sooner did we open the doors in early June, and we were ready within a few days to launch our summer reading program kickoff. That was our first opportunity after having been in place for a long time downtown. So after a quick sneak peek for mayor and council, we opened the doors and had a really successful summer reading program. And we did enjoy our location, 5702 Rowlett Road. I think a lot of our library customers did as well. Big drawback was that we really had no dedicated meeting space for our library programs, but that didn't daunt our staff. We, pushed tables around and held story time in a corner where we could do that. Our ESL classes pulled tables together and met in kind of out of the way area, but we were very, very glad and welcomed the opportunity to move back downtown again on June 6, 2018. It's hard to believe it's just barely been a year that we've been in place. So we closed and moved again, and boy, we get better all the time at doing it. We did have our summer reading program kickoff on June 11th. It was a little easier maybe, having done it before, 3 years later. But fiscal 2020 is going to be the hallmark where we are in year 2 of our full residency at 3900 Main Street. And fiscal 2020 is going to be the first full year for restaurant adjacency with a book club cafe next door. So always, it seems like we're always trying something new. We laugh about being a science lab, maybe because we're experimenting all the time, but I guess that's what process improvement is all about.
What impact have you seen on Book Club Cafe being there?
You know, we do have some customers who come in and use our cafe area where we share the common door. Before the close of the school year, there were some students who came in and bought food and beverages and came in. I would say that we're not having an overwhelming number of people who necessarily we can identify as somebody who came in from the cafe, because we will let people bring food from the outside and use our cafe area. That's not the case with the restaurant. They will not allow you to bring things from the outside. We so far have had, I think, what is a really good neighborly relationship with Book Club Cafe. Their staff have actually come in when they come to clear their customers' plates and cups from the table, have wiped down our tables. And so far, it feels really, really good. One of the staff members is a Rowlett guy. It's not a boy, young man, went to school with one of our employees. So I think we're off to a great start. And I do believe that they're getting more and more busy as the season goes on. They've only been in place, they opened the doors to the public, Laura, it was April, yeah, end of April, yes, because I was at the library conference, end of April. So their residency is still pretty new. I wanted to share some numbers with you. Just our gate counts, and now mind you, this is our first full year of residency at 3900 Main Street because we moved in June of 2018. So through the month of May, we're pushing about 100,000 total visits, and that is not counting the counts through the second set of gates that we have. We have security gates between our cafe area into the cafe because we don't want our inventory to walk out, or if people forget that they didn't check something out. But you know, over 2,000 visits in and out those doors between late April and the end of May. So combining that first number does not include the cafe visits. Just by way of comparison, in fiscal 2018, where we started off the fiscal year at 5702 Rowlett Road, our gate counts by the end of the fiscal year were about a little over 140,000. We're about to embark on our busiest time of the year now, the months of June and July, so we're real anxious to see what those two gates in combination are going to provide us in the way of foot traffic through the security gates at the library. Likewise, our checkouts from 1 October through the end of May, almost 175,000 physical items, about 30,000 digital items. So we're sitting right now at the end of May with over 200,000 items, digital and physical, that were checked out. Last year's total circulation was 312 and some change. So again, we're pushing those numbers, and I look to see us exceed that 312, 351 from last year's circulation. Interesting too, a couple of years ago we put in customer self-checkout kiosks. Right now our self-service is about 63% of the physical item checkout. So if you come in and check out a DVD, checked out a book, and used one of our self-service checkouts, that contributed to that 63%. Digital checkout. Oh, pardon? Well, I wanted it to be, but there are, in all honesty, there are some limitations. The machines, just like when you go through, you know, at your local grocery store, you got to scan the barcode the right way, and I mean, it isn't just zip, zip, zip. You can put multiple items on the pad, and it will check them out simultaneously, but it's not laser fast and lightning fast. We have 2 units in busy times of the summer now. There will be, you know, people queuing up there, and just I see the same thing at the retail stores. People get really impatient if their key type doesn't scan. They're turning around over the desk and saying, "Is this not working?" Or kind of block on your record, you didn't pay a fine. So some of my peer libraries who claim 97% self-checkout are probably not offering manual checkout. They're probably having staff standing right there to check out for. But do I always wish that it was higher and more? Oh yes, absolutely. Our digital checkouts are all self-service because you do them on your computer at home or on the, put a hold on them on the library's catalog. Those are still only about 14% of our total circulation. Again, there's a
They're
lot.
growing though, right?
They are, 10, 12% is where they have been before. And I'll mention to you when I get into one of our challenges with respect to materials, some of the limitations on ebooks and electronic resources. But the best part of all, in my mind and heart, is the fact that our active library card holders, those people who either got a new card or renewed one that they had, are over 13,000. For the longest time, we were hovering at 10,000 card holders, 11,000 card holders, 12,000. When we hit 13,000, I was elated. And I do think the trend is upward. Part of that is probably the interest in the new library facility. Another part of it is because once you get your library card, if you do nothing but check out ebooks and movies, streaming, digital, you don't have to come to the library, and there aren't any fines on anything that you borrow, because when your loan time is up, poof, they disappear. And a lot of those services too, like our Hoopla and Canopy, allow unlimited simultaneous use. So if Mark has a movie checked out, I can check out the same one because you pay for use on it. So it's really what we're trying to accomplish. We are an agile, and I do mean agile, but a very, very lean team. To meet accreditation requirements, the library is open 60 hours weekly. That is the minimum for a community our size. We are currently open 6 days a week. Our staff of 20 is the equivalent of 14.625 FTE. In years past, we had maybe as many as 16. We did some organizational redeployment so that we create a structure where not everybody in the library who works or reports to the library director. We have 2 managers, Phil Barrett, who does our technology and adult education, and then Laura, of course, who oversees our public services team, programming staff, and everybody who helps with circulation, whether it's checking an item out, getting somebody a library card, checking things back in, or putting things back on the shelf. 50% of our team are 20 hours a week or less part-time staff. And we have a cadre of wonderful volunteer tutors, 5 to provide GED tutoring, 2 who do ESL. And I'm so pleased, because this hasn't always been the news to report, but since the beginning of fiscal 19, we have had 3 GED graduates. We don't know whether it's the new location, because a couple of years ago they changed the curriculum. And not only did we lose tutors, but it was geared a little higher, a little more computer-oriented, a little more college prep-oriented. So we are very, very pleased to have graduated 3. That doesn't mean that we don't have GED students who are trying to work on I believe it's the 4 different categories of the test. You have to pass all 4 of the units in order to get your certificate. But we do know that if there ever was a more visible way that libraries change lives, that GED certification opens doors to employment, enhanced employment, and just huge self-confidence for the people that achieve that. One of the things we've also noticed is these days that a lot of the students who come to us to get their GED are functioning at a much lower level, like more of a need for adult basic education. Maybe not quite at the level that they used to be. They have greater needs academically, and then that combined with the new curriculum has kind of raised the bar a little bit more. So there are some students who we can't help, who the tutors do refer to other sources to get to that basic level, but we wish that we could help them as well. We just aren't equipped to dip down to the next academic level to get people up to that point where they could start the high school equivalency study. We have amazing volunteers. We have about 9 of our core volunteers who have been with us for a long, long time, and a lot of short-term volunteers who come either for not community service hours, but for National Honor Society, or whatever service hours that they need to achieve their goals or recognition, or just to help out and give back. Arts and Humanities Commission is part of my responsibility. I'm your staff liaison. They are one of the busiest boards in the city. Their fiscal 2019 program included 2 long-standing grant programs, cultural arts grants that benefit music, in arts interests, theater, and community in years past, and then also arts and education grants that are limited to Rowlett schools. Our contests, including Rowlett Sings, which is a new addition. We celebrated our 2nd annual Rowlett Sings vocal talent performance. I see I missed a quotation right there. In addition to our Young Artists exhibit and our writing and photography contest. We've had AHC calendars for a number of years now, and I believe this is the 4th year. Mayor's Purchase Awards for Artists Around Texas, a long-standing local artists group who in years past had their displays in the library proper. These days their displays and shows are over at City Hall in the annex, City Hall Annex, excuse me. Also, the Arts and Humanities Commission has been much more determined to raise awareness of the needs of the arts and the opportunities for arts and artists in the community through involvement in city events like the Main Street Markets, the Library Trunk or Treat program, Scarecrows on Main, Chamber Taste and Trade, where they helped out with the activities there, Trail of Trees decorating, recognizing Arts Advocacy Day on May 5th this year, and then they also were interested in, on behalf of the arts and community by attending an early meeting of the Rowlett Nonprofit Alliance. You'll hear more about this tomorrow night in their joint work session, so I hope I'm not stealing the show, but the point being that they have been incredibly active. By virtue of a lot of that activity, there's been a lot of council support. Several years ago, what we call the operating budget for the Arts and Humanities Commission was $4,000. It's quadrupled that. So there has been great support for the new request. It will have quadrupled. It's tripled right now. Anyway, and then in addition to that, the public art program has been extremely active. We just realized a new installation at Veterans Park, and another one is going into Fire Station number 3. So I'm very, very proud and a lot of activity in that. Our single budget request this year is for a 0.25 FTE increase, 10 hours a week in one of our existing library assistant positions to help us with the logistics, all the moving parts that go along with all these programs that are part of the Arts and Humanities Commission. Also some critical backup for our administrative assistant, administrative responsibilities, in that we don't want to lose that continuity and that institutional knowledge should retirement or an extended illness present itself. Our objectives, and there are many objectives. These are just the top 3 that I feel are extremely germane to what we're trying to do at the library. By the way, the Library Advisory Board is working on a review of the library policy manual. We hope to come to you at the end of this fiscal year with a recommendation for revisions in that. But there are really 3 basic parts of our library objectives that I want to talk about tonight. The first being the library as a place, a safe, comfortable, welcome place to meet. Sometimes libraries are called the 3rd place, the place that you go to when you're not at work, not at school, not at home. I like to call it the community's living room. Sometimes people get very comfortable in the living room. We ask them to put their feet down on the furniture. And please don't eat where you're not allowed to. But it is a community gathering place, and that is a very important part of any library in the community. What's a library without materials? To meet informational needs, recreational needs, support education, including social needs and cultural trends. And then finally, the human resources, after we talk about the materials resources, the collection, and the electronic resources that you don't see necessarily because you find them on your computer or your handheld electronic device. But the VIPs, in my opinion, are the bullet 3. Knowledgeable, professional, and dedicated staff who are focused to help our customers. Our customers have needs that run the whole gamut, from something as simple as how do you use a mouse to I need a dissertation on this, that, or the other that will tap into the library loan for you. But it comes down to about 3 challenges that I wanted to share with you tonight. I feel that our inability to not achieve what our 3 really primary objectives in our library service endeavors impedes our ability and the city's ability to be responsive to our community and residents' needs. I'll go through all of those in a little more detail, but there are the first 3 challenges that I'm going to share with you tonight. Things have changed in the 3 years that we were at 5702 Rowlett Road, and there have been some real pluses in coming back downtown. We now are positioned in an area where there's a large residential population living in very close proximity to the library. Convenience is definitely part of the advantage of living that close to the library. Coming back downtown after our stay at 5702, there was a heightened interest and demand for our services. A year ago on June 6th, we had a ribbon cutting on a very warm morning. I believe we had over 1,400 people that first day alone, so it was a busy summer. We also have what I think is a unique and innovative opportunity to work in partnership and in relationship with a local business. People who come to the coffee shop may have a need to come to the library, and there's a place that serves both our needs, whether it's our cafe where our customers come in with their Kentucky Fried Chicken one evening, a family to use the library, have their dinner, and then depart the cafe area and use their resources, or to come from the cafe with a friend and sit and talk in an area where we have collaborative booths where you can plug in your electronics to monitor screens, or meet with a larger group of people at one of our coffee shop type furniture pieces. There are also some perceptions about parking, concerns over parking, but to date, I think many of the fears that you would come downtown and never be able to find a parking place are unfounded. There are times a day when every space in front of the library is going to have a vehicle in it, and that's probably during one of our back-to-back story time offerings on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday mornings, or on a busy summer afternoon when we have a Legos program or a movie. Our Tuesday performer programs that are part of the summer reading program are still large enough that we do have them posted by the generosity of our friends at the RCC, because those are large attended programs. But again, a lot of the parking fears, I think, are really unjustified. You might not be able to get a parking space every time you come in front of the library, but you can't do that at the mall either. And you can drive around and around and around, or you can find a place that's a little farther away and hop on it. So, not to dismiss them, but I think a lot of the fears are unfounded. A big challenge, because things have changed in 3 years since we've been gone from downtown. But since our return on the start of the new fiscal year in 1 October, we have seen and dealt with a number of transient and large volumes of after-school student visitors. None of this is new. DART was here before we moved to 5702 Rowlett Road. The middle school has always been adjacent, and the library has been a popular place for kids to congregate, parents to meet their children after school. But in the time since 1 October, and while staff did meet with the police department and talk about strategies for how we were going to respond to dynamics that could result from that, we've made 33 calls since 1 October to 911 for situations where we would have an adult visitor whose health was of concern to us, or somebody who asked for medical help, a medical emergency where a customer might come in with maybe a blood sugar imbalance, or perhaps even a drug overdose. We have disruptive customers. We've had disruptive customers in every library I've ever worked in my entire lifetime, and I think it will probably continue because we are open to all. And we have had several instances where a customer's behavior was so unacceptable, and after warnings, they were asked not to come back and issued a criminal trespass citation, so that in the next year, if they did come in, they could be arrested. Other calls to 911 were requests for police assistance, and our amazing school resource officer, Vasquetta, who has been wonderful in intervening with some of the dynamics that we've had with kids who were being disruptive. The officers have also helped us to communicate with parents of students who have just outworn their welcome and are no longer welcome to come to the library because they abused their privileges, and in one case assisted us in a criminal trespass citation against a student.
Kathy, I have a question about this. So that looks like maybe about every 10 days since October 1st of last year.
Oh.
You've had something.
I'm sorry, that was through May, so it's 33 calls between October and May.
Well, then I'd say about once a week then.
And sometimes we'll have a couple of instances like in a same week, and then maybe not so much.
And so the stats for the 33 calls, I'm assuming that does not include the juveniles.
No, that does include, and I'm glad you said that. No, there was 33 calls, whether it was an adult situation.
Okay.
And I'm glad you asked that, because I didn't want to suggest that the student calls for assistance were more. It was 33.
One of the things that I brought up to, I think me and Brian talked about it, one of the things I was thinking about is for the next school year, probably using the VIPS program to probably be out in downtown when school gets out and just hang out in front of the library and walk around, just to kind of prevent criminal mischief that's been going on. It's just an idea that I floated around.
And we have had, in addition to, we have tried to deploy some management strategies. At the start of the school year, and also as we get closer to the holidays, kids are excited about being away from school. So we see trends as we get closer to the holidays. So we have asked for police department walkthroughs from 4:30 to 6. Those are the hours that the largest crowds come, and we have anywhere from maybe 50 to as many as 100 kids who come. When behaviors
That could include events,
when we have asked adults and students to leave because of disruptive or non-compliant behavior or threatening behavior, the kicker for us in that situation is that when we eject students from the library, they hang out in front of the library. And there are kids who just like to hang out in front of the library anyway because they're outside, they can use their voices. And again, there are instances of yelling and screaming and profanity. And we had the same situation when we were back at 3900 Main Street. I think the dynamic is a little different because it's a narrower public sidewalk and closer to the entrance. We used to have a large lawn that invited all kinds of interesting behaviors as well. But we have had some situations where there was some vandalism to the building and to some of the benches out front, some paint on the uprights. But we've also had mischief inside to the library too. The restrooms are a source of mischief. And again, these are not new student behaviors. They're not unique to the new facility. They're just a challenge to us in the library. Before school got out, it did require the involvement of the management team and professional staff, at least 3 of us every weekday. Fridays are a little bit lighter because the students don't tend to stay as long. But to monitor our public areas, the bathrooms, and to address situations with the students. We have installed a video camera surveillance system with the ability to see what kind of actions have happened. And as one of our staff development activities in May, we had staff training with the Crisis Assistance Officer, J.J. Jones, to talk to us about some of our encounters with some of those transient adults who have mental health and other issues, to help empower our staff to confirm what their concerns are. And the police department has been wonderful. They said, don't hesitate, call us, and we can help us. And again, some of our obstacles, again, these are just what we're dealing with. There could be any number of ways that we decide to address some of these concerns. But currently, our facility does lack enough space and seating for the size of the crowds, the after-school students, and then there's the noise and crowd control element. Staff have tried many times in all 3 locations that I've been involved in since my tenure with Rowlett to engage students in our programs, movies, use of the library resources. And there are students who just are not going to engage. They've been in school. They're not bad people. They just aren't done with engagement. They're waiting for the end of their day to reach the end of the day so they can go home. There are issues with student noncompliance and disrespect for the staff, other library users, and our police officers as well. which is kind of surprising. And then staff, our difficulty is that we can't be inside and outside the library. It's frustrating because staff are trying to help customers who need help with computers, trying to find and locate items. And we do try to keep an eye on what's going on outside, but honestly, we have our hands full inside. And unless somebody alerts us to a problem or we see something, it's difficult for us to do that. At the end of the day, all that really matters is that we work to our very best ability to avoid any kind of branding of the library as a place for favorites and because that's not what we're about. And we work very, very hard to address that. So. On another challenge, area of challenge, our materials budget support. Our customer demand for ebooks, downloadable digitals, online resources. From year to year, we have shifted money from other line items into our print and our audiovisual collections to make more and more of those purchases. For example, we've drawn money from some of our other line items to purchase resources like Overdrive Advantage ebooks. Those are restricted just to Rowlett library card holders, even though you can get Overdrive ebooks through our consortium. And then Canopy and Hoopla streaming devices. The last time that we made a budget increase in the library materials account was about 10 years ago. And in all fairness, we have not asked for more money in our materials account because we've drawn it from other areas of our budget. We appreciate being able to have that flexibility, but also not shame on us. We've been in transition, and to ask for a boost in materials that we can't support with sufficient shelving would be crazy because we would be getting rid of materials that we had not purchased all that long ago. Since 2015 to that point, we have strategically been reducing our physical holdings, especially this last move when we moved to a new facility. Our physical items stand at about $76,000 now. Those are books, audiobooks, DVDs, and kids' music CDs. The truth is that in several areas of the collection, we are starting to run out of room, and the shelving is very, very tight. Most vulnerable are our kids' picture books because we buy a lot of them, and there's a huge demand for them. If you were to come to the library right now and say, Kathy, you're out of your mind, I see a lot of space on those shelves, but it's summer. And a lot of our stuff is out in the summertime, so it does paint a little different picture. But our juvenile fiction and nonfiction collections are growing tight during the school year, and our young adult fiction is pretty tight. It's in a small area. Our adult audiobooks, which a lot of our commuters still really, really love to have the discs to play in their cars, did become so tight that we had to do what we call partitioning it. All that means is we picked up a big chunk of the collection and turned it around and put it on the metal shelves in a different area. But it partitions the collection, and some people get a little bewildered about why do we start with age behind you on the shelves behind you. So it makes our browsing a little less convenient and self-service a little less convenient because people need a little direction sometimes.
So do you think there's an opportunity to begin to put some of that on flash drives that will take up less room? I know like my car doesn't even have a CD player in it.
Oh,
and it's just moving
to
that direction. Well, no, we have one that does too.
You can download those ebooks onto your device as well. That's one thing. I actually have a little SanDisk in my car that I can download those onto. But again, what you can't see. The challenge of librarianship in the 21st century is the invisible resources. If you walked into our library and you didn't have any signage up, you'd think, oh, that's nice, you've got all these nice books here and it's a lovely day. Well, we have literally hundreds of thousands of streaming video and ebooks that you can borrow. You just don't see them if you don't use our catalog, or you have to see some promotional material. So that's the age.
So it's educating and moving people to
exactly, and again,
resource they can't see.
Again, and staff to help you. You don't have the swivel, we don't have it print, we might have the digital. We could find that movie for you on Hoopla and introduce somebody to a service to make them independent and be able to access those electronic resources. So I'll be quick. I've been talking for a long time. I know that a facilities analysis is part of our future. I know that our library is was designed where we are, our location right now was designed as a temporary location. So I'm just some parting thoughts in moving forward. If in fact the library is part of any kind of new facility, whether it's standalone or in combination with other government offices, the recommended range for a library in a community our size is from like 30,000 to 40,000 square feet. But it doesn't matter if you had 100,000 square feet if that design was not predicated on your community needs, or maybe if you only had 10,000 square feet, if it wasn't predicated on the needs of the community. We also have to think very carefully about our next generation of library users. I think when Tana Daniels from the Library Advisory Board spoke at the joint work session, she emphasized the fact that we need to shift our focus from collections to users. All those electronic resources don't have nearly as much space, but we need community meeting space. And again, we want to create a participatory platform that lets the community share passions, expertise, and resources. Maker spaces are a big, big deal in a lot of libraries these days. We know that physical materials are not going away, but e-resources are not, everything is not available electronically, and the cost of some of those resources are as much as 3 times what we pay for a print item. They're metered, meaning you buy a license that runs out after 25 uses, or is only good for a year. Tech-savvy personnel is key to our success in the future, because you can't help people who don't know how to do what it is that we need to do. We need to be where our users are when they need us. In our strategic planning sessions, we talked about pop-ups and about different ways to bring the library to our users where they are. Some libraries are investigating not only being community meeting places, but also career centers and offering passport services, marriage licenses, voter registration, and local government services, mailing and shipping services. I can't emphasize enough the need for us to provide multiple and varied settings, group meeting spaces, individual meeting spaces, communal working spaces, and then of course the need to incorporate meeting rooms and venues to support our cultural events. It's an interesting set of slides that Laura found for me from the IFLA conference in Columbus, Ohio, back in 2016. So thank you for your patience in hearing all of my talks about libraries, but I love them so much. So,
We're glad you have a passion for it.
thank you. And a wonderful, amazing staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Me? Angie, don't kill me now. Thanks, Laura.
Okay. Here we go. So, Parks and Recreation 2020 budget presentation. So there are some of the things that we're involved in, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Department focus, as you guys know, several years ago, we really put together what are our 5 tenets. What do we try to accomplish in everything we do? Drive tourism, be a juvenile crime prevention unit for the police department by offering leads and programming and after-school programs where we can. Increase the air and water quality in Rowlett, being a Tree City USA, and really trying to keep more trees planted, sidewalks cooler, the health benefit services. It's a proven fact that the presence of green spaces has clearly been shown to provide health benefits. But then we also have the Rowlett Community Center that keeps programs that offer you healthy indoor, wet zone water park, all of those things that affect health conditions, including stress, depression, obesity, emotional disorders. That's really what we're trying to combat. And then benefits to property tax values. So John Crompton is a very famous professor in Parks and Rec from Texas A&M. And he did much of his career study on the fact that if you live close to a park, you can see as much as 20% increase in tax valuation over a similar house that is in excess of 600 feet from the park. We've kind of been looking into whether that is relevant in Rowlett, and I will keep you updated. It's quite a project. So as we work through GIS and get that data, I'll keep you guys updated. Cool things in Parks and Rec. So you know me, you got to keep this fun, right? So award-winning facilities. Our adult softball complex was the 2017 Midwest Complex of the Year through USSSA. We received the 2018 Wall of Fame through USSSA. And then we were the TAP Agency of the Year for Youth Athletics for Class 2, which is any city within our same size. We have had a very aggressive CIP project schedule. In addition to completing about 95% of our 2015 projects, we're already ticking off 2018 projects and doing big things at Wet Zone and doing big things in parks and trying to get a head start on that so that we always stay ahead of schedule. I have an amazing team. I absolutely could not do what I do without the team of employees and volunteers that we have. So Trung Tran, who works with our pickleball program and has really been the heartbeat behind that, and the lessons and the clinics, received the Platinum Award for Volunteer of the Year. And then the rest of my team really continues to focus on training and us holding staff retreats to ensure the success of all of our team members. So if they find something they really want to go to, that's what we look at. How do we fund them doing that? And it has proven to be hugely successful in Parks and Recreation. We still have a few holes we're trying to fix, but some of the stuff like irrigation and being a chemical applicator, some of those things we've really been able to send staff, playground safety inspectors, send staff to get trained in, and then also our certified CPRP, Certified Parks and Recreation Professional. We have a huge number of staff member on our team that professional Parks and Rec staff that are certified. We're also a nationally accredited department, so we just finished up our accreditation visit, and we will likely receive our reaccreditation in October at the annual conference, and that's when they make that final decision, but we won't have any problems. Challenges, staffing, keeping positions filled. It is a challenge right now to find maintenance level workers. 3 years ago, we would get 200 applications for a Parks Maintenance Specialist 1. Today, we get 15. And it's slim pickings, and then it's hard to get them here and get them to work because that's a hard job to do that doesn't get paid $25 an hour, right? And so, and then making sure that we have enough staff to complete the projects and maintain our maintenance schedule as well. Budget allocations, and I'll talk a little bit about the NRPA benchmarks and how I got up with these were my challenges. We have to make sure that we continue to have the funding to maintain everything in inventory. As we bring more and more parks online, we're going to have to increase that funding. Downtown, we've kind of taken over all the maintenance downtown, and that will only increase as Main Street gets finished out to PGBT. Bringing Herforth and the new version of that online, Scenic Point Park, and then Lakefront at Pecan Grove, which, as you guys know, will be at the end of Main Street, down at the very back of Pecan Grove. Adding special events and special event funding. So each year last year we added $25,000 in special event funding. We've asked for that again, but we have one staff member that is responsible for all of our special event operations, our marketing and our sponsorships. And that can be overwhelming at times. Lindsay does an amazing job, and she works more hours than humanly possible to get it all done, and does it with a giant smile on her face. But one of the staffing things we have asked for is a marketing and sponsorship specialist to just help with the marketing element of that, so that my special event person can really focus on what do the special events look like and how do we grow them, and how do we then find that signature event for Lila. And then the addition of amenities without more maintenance staff and funding. We've added slides, we've added playgrounds, we're adding and will add additional field space, and then bringing new parks online as well. Needs. So we will talk a little bit about the park metrics. I have some of those in here, and they really guide how I make my requests and my needs. It focuses on staffing, budget, and then facilities and amenities, including field allocations. Goes to fire department. You will see tonight my staffing plan, and that really is based on the increase in acreage and amenities and services over the next 5 years. We will talk a little bit about fee increases. So to continue to maintain sustainability in a world where everything is getting used more and harder to maintain, we're at a point now where it's time to do a few fee increases, and I'll show you those tonight. And then continue our equipment replacement plan. So invest and maintain our facilities. For a long time, we kicked the can down the street, and we've done some major investment in infrastructure improvements, wet zones, fields, all of our park amenities, putting in new things. But all of those things have to be maintained so that we don't end up back in the same boat we were in. And then also invest in, you'll see there's a lot of equipment on my list. It's really about investing and providing my team the equipment they need to keep up with the maintenance. So there's a sand pro. We have a sand pro, but we also have 10 skinned ball fields in our inventory today with the addition of 2 more. That allows 2 people to do that job instead of just 1. So NRPA Park Metrics, NRPA is the National Recreation and Parks Association. The Park Metrics system is the most comprehensive source of data standards and insights for parks and recreation agencies. So each agency across the country has the ability, and every accredited agency has to do this. It isn't an option. It's a standard we must meet. So we log in and we count the number of staff, we count the budget dollars, we count the number of trees, we count everything under the sun, and it goes into the system. Aaron, as you know, is our business manager, Aaron Cleaver, and he puts this all in annually, and they generate a report that tells us what do other agencies like us around the country have. It's hard to find agencies just within our circle that are exactly like us, but there are a ton across the country that are very similar to us. And so we use this, Parks and Rec professionals use it as a benchmark to gain funding support, improve operations, and better serve our community. So you have heard me talk, and we will go into more detail when we talk about our field allocation study. This is where that information came from. So it really is the national standard on what you need in ball fields, in rec centers, and ice hockey rinks, and staffing and budgeting, and just about everything that you can imagine. It's about a 40-page document. So the typical Parks and Rec agency offers 1 park for every 2,181 residents, with 10.1 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. But every Parks and Rec agency is diverse as the communities that they serve. And so we have to take that benchmark information into consideration as we look at route length. So I won't go through all of this. It's about a 3-page Excel report. So I just pulled out a few. Look at the number of residents per park. So if you look at cities that have 60,000 residents, the benchmark, we have 15 developed parks, and we have 22 that are total developed and undeveloped. And so the national standard is 2,326 residents per park. Rowlett sits at about 4,000 if you just look at our developed parks. And ironically enough, I even checked the map again today, make sure I was right, because after I gave this to Brian, I'm like, I don't know, but I absolutely did the math again. And if you look at our total park system, developed and undeveloped, we're right on target. We hit the nail right on the head. There's like a decimal point way down there somewhere that's off just a little bit. But so at 22 developed parks, we really meet the benchmark. And developed park, for us, an undeveloped park is truly just a piece of land that we mow every 30 days. An undeveloped park could be something that is a little more maintained, has a trail, doesn't have to be fully developed, but just has open space that is available for citizens to use. And then acres of parkland per 1,000 residents, the benchmark is 9.4 acres of parkland, and we're at 6.07. I won't go through all the indoor parks and rec facilities. You'll see there's some funny stuff on there, right? There's ice rink. Probably in Texas, we're never going to have an ice rink. Maybe if we partner with the Dr. Pepper Stars group and get something like that, but this takes into account national standards, and that's where we have to really look at what's right around that. And then staffing and budget.
Can you go back for a second?
You bet.
What's the nature center? Oh, you're talking about our nature trail.
I'm using like Nature Trail and I'm coming on board with the Environmental Learning Center. I use Nature Trail for our nature center. A true nature center is more like Oak Point Nature Center in Plano or some of the other ones.
Thank you.
Where an education element is really a part of that.
Thank you.
And then staffing and budget. So Parks and Recreation Agency staffing full-time equivalents, again, based on population. The benchmark is 56.5. Rowlett is at 34.5 full-time equivalents, which gives us as a shortfall of about 22. We do have a 5-year staffing plan, which I'll share with you in just a second. It gets us a little bit closer, a little bit at a time, without requesting a dozen employees right after that. Still,
Question there. So I know that we outsource a lot of stuff. If you plugged that into that, would that tighten that delta a little?
It's hard to say because they measure contracts on a whole different level, so like mowing contracts and that type of thing. This is truly full-time equivalent staff in an agency with our size. So it's a little hard to say because every agency does it a little bit different. We outsource a ton of our mowing.
Yeah.
Rockwall outsources something a little bit different. So that's kind of a delta that's hard to measure just because saying I have mowing contracts here, they mow everything. In Rockwall, their staff still mows parks. They don't turn that park element over. So it's a little tough to find where that magic comes.
Okay, just wondering.
Yeah. It's just the honest answer. It's a real tough moving target. So, I mean, we're so lucky that we have so much of our mowing outsourced because it does take a ton of time. So then the responsibilities of Parks and Rec staff, we really look at what do each of those full-time equivalents do and try to match it against the benchmark. Annual operating expenditures, these are median numbers and I have all of them, but the benchmark is about $7 million and Rowlett sits about 4. The good thing is if you look at operating expenditures per acre of park and open space, if you take into consideration everything, the benchmark is 11.9, we're around 10.8, so we're much closer. And then again, with the operating expenditures per capita, the benchmark is 104.58, and we are 67.65. So 5-year staffing plan, and this really is a moving target because in 5 years, the trends for Parks and Recreation can change. So this is based on the trends of today and what I expect the trends to look like for probably the next 3 years. You'll see a heavy focus on our park side, right? As we take on more and more parks and more amenities to the capital improvement projects. Obviously, we need more and more dedication of staff, the boots on the ground that are out there to maintain and manage those things. So this year we're asking for a Parks Maintenance Specialist 1, a Parks Maintenance Specialist 2 that would be assigned to our custodial crew, which is a 7-day-a-week service. Their main focus is on the beautification and the trash and the restroom cleaning of our park system, and then they do special projects as they have time. And then a marketing and sponsorship specialist, again, to take just a little bit of that pressure off and really start to drive the ability to drive in sponsorships, not just for special events, but for park equipment and for trees and for everything that's in our sponsorship catalog that's out there available that you can donate. And then as we move forward, looking at a facility supervisor or maybe even a park planner, a contract coordinator. We do have a ton of contracts. Right now, I have a Parks Maintenance Specialist 1, Ryan Day, who is amazing, who is managing pretty much full-time our mowing contracts alone. Because that is a nonstop every single day. Get a call, go out, see, call the mowing company, meet them, negotiate, and go to the next one. And that's pretty much what he does during this season. And then he helps with special projects. And then the possibility of looking as an outdoor programmer. As we add more and more lakefront parks, we have more and more opportunities to offer different fishing and hiking and camping and all the good stuff like that. And then you can kind of see the next 3 years as we look ahead. Over time, slowly but surely reducing where we are on the benchmark FT. Fee increases. So Wet Zone Water Park has not had any fee increases since I came in 2011. Records prior to that are a little tricky to negotiate on maybe when we did have our last fee increase. I can tell you that in my time here, we have added 2 new features and made many improvements to Water Park. And it's just going to get better. We're getting ready to add a new playground, and the staff this year is knocking it out of the park every single day. They are doing an amazing job, and we're getting rave reviews from the park. And really, this fee increase puts us in line with parks with similar service. So at the top, in our H2O and Hawaiian Falls, don't really compare to Wet Zone, right? They're a completely different game. But I wanted you to see what those fees were, just so that you had some kind of perspective. City of McKinney APAC Center is relatively new, very similar to the service we have. City of Arlington Water Park is very similar to the service that Wet Zone provides. City of Dallas Bahama Beach, very similar. And then you'll see there, it says City of Rowlett wet zone and our current fees and then our new proposed rates. So the increases aren't significant, but they do accommodate for the fact that we are gonna continue to have maintenance, increased maintenance as we add things, and the cost of doing business is just getting higher. So we no longer pay lifeguards $7.50 an hour. We have to stay competitive, and that is anywhere, and human resources has been amazing because these guys are part-time seasonal employees. They're here 90 days. And so we have to be competitive with what we're having. And so this allows us to continue to do that.
Is that, you're thinking about putting those in place next summer?
We would love to, yes, put them into place next summer.
I think you need to think about upping those a little bit more.
I can always do that.
Because 50-cent increase, when you have to have an increase in.
Yeah, and some of them are a little bit more, and some of them are a little bit less, but yeah, I mean, that's one of those things. And then we'll definitely take a look at it, bring it back to council as part of the bigger conversation budget. So fee increase recommendations for the Rowlett Community Center. Room rental prices are in line with surrounding communities. My staff literally called and went online and found about 30 in the area. It's hard to find something that matches Rowlett Community Center because what we have is a true community center, and that's not what every community in this area has. They have fitness centers, they have teen centers, they have what they call a rec center, which is only open after school just for kids, and so we are very, very unique in that we have a facility that has gym space and workout equipment and racquetball courts, which no one has, and then meeting rooms, and just open space for people to hang out and a track and senior programs and everything that we do. The major recommendation is increasing the monthly fee, the fee for kitchen rentals, AV equipment, sound system rental, and tablecloth rentals. I was going to plug in the individual resident annual versus monthly membership. I'm having some problem with RecTrack. And Vlad copied over my slideshow before I got that deleted this afternoon. So, I had that conversation right. I was like, when did you copy the show? So, these are just some of the things that we're looking at.
Do we really have non-residents using the community?
Absolutely.
That's pretty incredible.
Absolutely.
Oh, all the time.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
And I'll have those numbers. I just unfortunately don't have them right now. And I thought I had deleted that, but it made it into the slideshow. So, monthly resident. We would like to go up just a little bit, and then monthly non-resident, and it's really always been based on, we used to, and we had this conversation, do an EFT program where we automatically deducted every month. Now our rates are $101, or you can come in and buy 1 month, 2 months, 3 months at a time. The EFT program ran into a lot of stumbles because people change credit cards or their expiration date hits, and when I started, we were several $1,000s in arrears of collecting funds, and it was a disaster to get through. And our participants really like this method better. They show up, they hand us their credit card, we charge it right then, and we go on, or they buy an annual membership. It's real simple. Never have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about doing the EFT program. And so the monthly non-resident, increasing the kitchen rentals just a little bit to stay competitive. We looked at what other cities do. And that seems to be going great. We have recently updated all of our AV equipment and all of our sound system. And so that just helps us continue to make sure that we're offering the best and that we're taking care of what we got. And then tablecloths, just the cost of managing a tablecloth program has increased.
Andy, I was gonna say, just because we did the prayer breakfast and we used tablecloths, and I think you're just getting cost there.
Yeah, that's, at 10, we truly are. Now, they are looking, Lindsay and Aaron have really started looking at what, it has been $8 everywhere forever.
Yeah, were they picking up and delivering, or do you guys have to go get them?
So we've done kind of a joint thing. So sometimes we're having them cleaned and sometimes we're having them delivered. We're working right now with Metro Linen to try to reduce our costs. And if we do that, that may not be necessary. If I can get tablecloths at $2.50 and sell them for $8, I don't need to raise the rate. But if I have to keep taking them to the cleaners,
right,
Are you up? Okay.
Well, I just don't think we need a detailed tablecloth
Right.
discussion. It's getting a little late.
I'll be quick.
No.
I'm almost done.
Are you going to talk about tablecloth?
No. I bet that we're not going to be nearly the only city that increases programs like
We're
this,
not.
especially since the state.
Okay, I've heard. Text that to me, like, and I'll get on it. So 3/4%, as you guys know, several years ago, council enacted a 3/4% community enhancement funding. And it was really focused on, this 3/4% was specifically focused on improving parks maintenance standards. It was about raising our staff level and completing some projects. So in the orange, you see everything we've done with this money since 2015. In the yellow is what we are proposing for 2020 and then 2021. In addition, we have added 5 parks maintenance specialists. This past year, we added a parks crew leader, and then I kind of worked in some staff over the next 4 years, so 5 years. So this is kind of where we're trying to go with this money long-term. I have all the way back to 2015. I kind of deleted that because it was a little overwhelming for the slide, but for 2020, we can actually continue to fund that staff, plus fund a parks maintenance specialist too, and then fund some projects as well. Any questions? Look at that.
I can ask it.
What do you want to know about tablecloth?
I will tell you.
I know that adds up.
I will tell you, I texted Angie several questions during that presentation.
Yes, she did. I'm happy to answer any questions via text message as well, since we're running out of time.
Did you get napkins when you got the call?
Tablecloths are a crazy business. All right, thanks, y'all.
I just used the tablecloth.
My God, you were so fast.
All right, do mine. Energy left for this?
Are you last?
We got 10 minutes, Gary.
10 minutes. Last one, guys. So, strategic priority for public works and investing in transportation infrastructure, and the 8 goals that support that priority. 2017, we were the 124th accredited agency recognized by the American Public Works Association, and this year we completed our 2-year assessment, which sets us up for accreditation in 2 years. Departments in public works, engineering, streets, traffic, and all the utility functions, fleet, facility, solid waste, and public works administration. Through this organizational overview in there for reference, part of my discussion. So part of the biggest opportunity in public works is deferred maintenance. And deferred maintenance, in our opinion, is because of insufficient resources, and those resources are employees. Did not ask for employees in utility funds this year because we think it's prudent. We have 10 openings that cannot fill. And a civil engineer position has been open for 3 years. And we get a couple of applicants every now and then. It might meet the criteria as far as technical experience, but there might be a communication gap, and it's just not a fit for what we're looking for. This person runs meetings with contractors, interacts with residents. So that's a tough one. And in the water and wastewater utilities, we have so many mandated functions and priority functions that it leaves a small percentage of people to do maintenance, to deal with infiltration and inflow. So an example is we have 21,000 meters in the city, which we are on a floater replacement program. We have 3-man crew. Right now we have a 1-person crew. So we have to pull resources from maintenance to fill in the voids here to meet our mandated functions. 2,000 fire hydrants we have to maintain twice a year. 4,000 valves we have to exercise twice a year. And 1 valve, a 36-inch valve, would be 100 turns just to open. So you get 100 turns to shut it. So it's very time consuming. So that is the premise of what we're shooting for public works.
I'm sorry. So you said 10 employees that you need, or that positions that haven't been filled?
73 people in public works. We have 10 openings.
10 openings. Okay.
So in that flow, we have 33 in the utility department. That's in water and sewer, and that's 6 openings in that department.
Is it because of salary or because of quality?
So it's the same issue that Angie has, attracting people. We had 5 interviews lined up this week, and 3 of them no-show.
That's exactly what happens
Yeah.
every time.
One of them, a lot of his application didn't meet qualifications, so it's tough out there. And one of the unintended consequences in public works of having the short staff is we get some overtime, so sometimes I might steal some of Angie's people,
Yeah, Gary.
lure in because of the overtime, just to supplement their income, so sorry about that, Angie. But the biggest issue of deferred maintenance is the infiltration. Infiltration is water that infiltrates your sanitary sewer system, cracks pipes that are failed, joints that are not maintained. So that is the consequence of having insufficient resources for maintenance. You can have a sanitary sewer overflow with the increased flows of water. And last week we had a gentleman doing a new development. He did a great job flushing his new water pipe, but he just shoved it right into a sewer cap and just ran it right into a sewer line. So that's the issues that we need to catch. And we can catch that. We camera and clean 5,000 feet of sewer line a day. I think our crews do an excellent job. It's a mile of sewer line camera cleaning a day. So Asian Fleet, I did ask for a new mechanic. The industry standard for mechanics is 1 per 35 vehicles. We got 430 vehicles and 2 mechanics. So we did a lot of trips to Ford House.
Do a lot of trips to what?
Ford House to repair, minor repairs we could do in-house. We have to get BIPs to help us transport them back and forth, or we have to use our own resources to deliver the vehicles.
And it's more costly having them do it too.
Correct. Time consuming and the cost, yes. So that our facilities, we did ask for a custodian. There's 18 facilities, that's 152,000 square feet. So the industry average would call for 6 full-time employees. We had 4 full-time employees, 2 part-time employees, and our maintenance tech is cleaning the development service and human development building. So we're asking for an employee so our maintenance tech can go back to do maintenance on air conditioners, changing light bulbs. That's an expensive study. So challenges are, like we discussed, filling open positions, work with Richard. We had several discussions on strategy to curtail this. And I think we have a good plan, which we'll present later. The strategy session. And we have to be, I did say it right. So our goal is to be optimal.
You have good hearing.
I made it to the end here. So,
You heard Blake whisper that.
So we try to be efficient, and to be efficient, you have to have people. So right now, we're going on overtime. Last week, we did a pipe bursting job on Cheyenne. The guys started at 6 in the morning, they went home at midnight. So next morning, they were there at 6:30, ready to go. So that's taxing, and it can only last so long, so we need to get some people.
We have a lot going on around town.
We do have a lot in our CIP program, like Angie mentioned, the parks, a lot of street rehabs, neighborhood rehabs. So I think we're making great progress. So anyway, to summarize here, our goals is to add the custodial full-time employee, get the civil engineer hired, keep going and hiring the maintenance specialist, whatever we can do to attract them. I know that QT pays $18 an hour starting out. We start at $14.25, so have a tough time meeting that. And then continuing the pavement and utility maintenance programs, which is key to one program. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Shortest presentation.
30,000 foot.
You know, council, you'll remember some conversations we had. In police, we were having some really severe difficulties in hiring certain positions like dispatchers, for example. We think we have come on a strategy that will help us do that. One of those you may remember is the lateral transfer. Because if somebody's already been working at another agency for 3 or 4 years and they want to make a move, but they lose money to do it, they're not going to do it. So we have high hopes that will work. There's other strategies we may be able to employ in public works. But I will say this, though, one of the most difficult positions right now to recruit and hire for and retain are engineers, and that's just everywhere. It's a brutal game right now. All these cities in DFW and the private sector are all fighting over the same bucket of folks, and so it's tough.
So council, we also got an email from Judge Liston today you should look at. And is that a wrap?
That's right, Mayor.
Any questions, any comments, anybody?
Was this helpful? I mean, this
Should have done it years ago.
Yes, I think so.
Did you hear me?
But I'm sorry,
Said we should have done this years ago.
years ago.